Welcome to the Aging Well Firefighter, the podcast for first responders, our families, and the communities we serve. Whether you're on the front lines or standing with us, I'm here to help you fight wisely and age bravely. Today we're turning fall prevention upside down. Because here's the truth. No matter how strong or active or how careful you are, at some point, the ground wins. So the question isn't just how do you avoid falling? It's how do you fall well and get back up again? I'm joined remotely today by Dr. Eric Meyer, Doctor of Physical Therapy, owner of MVP Rehab and Sports Performance in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, recently named Best Rehabilitation Facility in Dodge County. Dr. Meyer holds a master's degree in human performance and has a background in exercise physiology and coaching. He doesn't just treat injuries. His philosophy is helping people thrive and live their best lives. In this conversation, we'll talk about why traditional healthcare overlooks fall training, how physical therapy can teach safer landings and safe recovery from the ground, and why building confidence is as important as building muscle. By the end, you'll see resilience in a whole new way, not as something you have, but as something you can practice. So if you're ready, let's dive in. I've got Dr. Eric Meyer with me. Dr. Meyer, thank you so much for joining me. I noticed in Dodge County's Best that you were recently named Best Rehabilitation Facility in Dodge County, and that's a huge honor. What do you think sets your clinic apart, and what's the philosophy or the approach that you credit with earning you that recognition?
Yeah, I was very honored to receive that. For me, the process is just a little different. I would say it's more in depth. It's more than standard medical care, and it's not just relieving a pain or improving a weakness and such, but it's really geared towards making people thrive. And that can mean a lot of different things to different people. It can be, running a marathon. It can be just being able to walk down the street with your neighbors. It can be getting down onto the floor to be able to play with your kids without a back pain. Really aiming to help people become their best selves. And part of that's physical, part of that's mental as well, of course. But the biggest aim that really sets MVP apart and really is aiming to really impact people in the best ways.
In the companion article that I'm basing this podcast on, I kind of talked about flipping the script on falls to not just preventing them, because in some cases they're inevitable, but actually training to fall better. From your perspective as a physical therapist, why is the skill of falling better so overlooked in traditional healthcare?
I'm sure a very big reason for that is what can happen if you fall. Right? You want to avoid that. And I mean, it is better to avoid a fall. It's never, disadvantageous to avoid a fall. The thing that I like to, give the analogy to is little kids that might not know how to swim too well. We want them to stay out of the pool, but we should teach them to swim, right? We should teach them to be able to get out of a pool as well. Not just, all right, just never fall in the pool, never slip into the pool, but let's learn to swim and learn how to get out of the pool. Both the skill of falling better and falling safer is something that isn't necessarily looked at as like a medical care or something that can be improved upon. It's kind of a black or white. Either you fall or you don't. There's many shades of gray. It's like, you can fall and you can have a major injury. It's certainly, like, I'm not going to sit there and say that that's never happened, but a lot of times it isn't. And especially there's ways to make it, air quotes, better fall. Something that doesn't involve more than, picking yourself back up off the floor and standing back up again. That's more than likely going to be the outcome from a fall. But I think people just want to look at it as like, well, the only thing we want to really avoid are the major things from a fall. And so let's just not fall.
I love that pool analogy. And what that makes me think about is, as a firefighter, of course, we never want a fire to happen. That's tragic. But when fires do happen, we want people to know what to do during that circumstance. We want them to practice being able to get out of their house safely. We want them to know what the plan is for their family reuniting. And your analogy about the pool reminded me exactly of that. When fires happen, we want them to know how to recover from it and how to deal with it as it's happening. So, Dr. Meyer, what do you see in your practice when it comes to, say, protective reflexes and balance as people age? How does physical therapy address that slowing response time or even the loss of confidence that can come as we age and know that we're not as spry as we used to be?
Yeah, that's something I definitely see in my practice with physical therapy is people say, I'm not as spry as I used to be, or I don't have as good a balance, or I've never had good balance. People can say that in their 20s or 30s, let alone at an age where people are falling more frequently. The biggest thing is that if there's an issue that needs to be addressed, PT can help address that. The loss of confidence, I think, is a very big thing. People are very afraid of falling and aren't confident in their balance, and so they don't do it as much. Not saying that everybody needs to have the balance of a gymnast or something, but people just find the more safe positions, if you want to say,
Okay.
For some people, that's just sitting, like staying seated more often. That certainly makes people feel more confident, and then they do it more, and then they lose the confidence of being in unstable situations, such as walking around a backyard or something that's uneven ground. And in terms of like the slowing response time and such, yes, there are factors as we age that do slow response time. I can't say that there aren't, but I think the bigger reason with the slowing response time is more of like the use it or lose it principle. As you sit, you don't have to have much response time. You're in a position where you're not going to fall, or you don't have to have a righting reaction to keep yourself from falling and such. And so you don't use it as much. Anything in the body, whether you're 20 or 80, if you're not using it consistently, you lose it. And I think that's something that people very often just think like, oh, well, it's just aging. It's like, well, what do we do more as we age? We aren't as active and all these things that we once were, and then we lose the ability to do those as well. And then we find those positions where we're more comfortable and more confident in, and then it just kind of snowballs a little bit more and a little bit more.
I've seen that some rehab and sports programs borrow techniques from, say, martial arts or judo or gymnastics to teach controlled landings. Is fall training something that PTs are starting to embrace more broadly? And if so, what does that look like in practice?
I do believe that PTs are in a great position to help people fall better. And that practice can be person dependent. Like some people, like they have absolutely no ability to control themselves. They freeze, they instantly fall like a giant tree and such. And other people have a little bit better ability. And so it literally might just be for some people learning to just not freeze. And for other people, it might be learning how to contort their body in a way that is safer to land. Like you're not landing on the hardest part or the worst possible outcome and such. For some people, that might sound very like, oh gosh, I don't want to like go to physical therapy and fall more. I'm trying to avoid falling. But it can literally, for some, be right next to a table or a chair and have that raised up very high. So it's a very short distance that they're falling into or leaning back into, and just learning how to lean again, right? And so teaching them to, all right, as you lean, your body's going to shift its weight this way, or it's going to, your center of balance might be a little bit off, but this is how you move differently when that's happening. And so really the term or phrase might be graded exposure, where you slowly introduce some of these things in a way that their body can handle it and, not have the bad outcome.
From my experience in fire and EMS, there are a lot of situations where somebody will fall and they're not necessarily hurt, but they call 911 because they're unable to get up off the floor. And it's occurred to me that one of the overlooked parts of fall training is learning how to get up off the floor and do it safely. So to you, how important is that skill, and how do you help people build that?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but for some people, it's as simple as, when was the last time they were on the floor intentionally? I have young kids. I'm on the floor daily playing with them, sometimes being wrestled by all three of them at the same time. And so it's obviously a different thing. but it's kind of one of those things like, oh, it's really hard to get off the floor, so I just don't do it. And just like everything else, it's harder to regain that skill. Now, it is something that can be learned. I think the old cliche, if you can't teach an old dog new tricks, it's like, well, it's not a new trick. It's just something you haven't done in a while. It's going to take some practice. It's going to take being in, some situations that involve more effort and maybe a little less comfort, but it's certainly something that can be learned for just about anybody. You build that up by sometimes literally getting people to first learn how to roll on a floor, right? If they fall on their back, how do you get up from there or from the side or some of these positions like, yeah, well, how about just rolling? Can you roll from side to side? Can you get into a position where you're on all fours? And then do you need to crawl over to a couch or a chair or something that you can put your arms up on and use a little bit more leverage that way? That's where people think that it's like it's an all or none thing, that you can fully get off the floor or you can't. And all right, yeah, so you're not going to be able to just do this once and get off the floor on your own tomorrow. But maybe for the first week, we just work on teaching you to roll over so that you're not just flat on your back. Because it's pretty hard to get up from the floor, like just straight on your back, not using your hands, all that different type of stuff. And for some people, they have it rolled over, as silly as that sounds, on a floor for a long period of time. So it's a skill we've been able to do since birth, but they just haven't done it for 10 years maybe. And we can first get them into, a rolling pattern, get them all the way over onto under their stomach. And then from there, we bring into, can you get your arms underneath yourself? Can you scooch your knees underneath yourself or different things like that? It's a step-by-step thing. It is something that takes time to learn depending on how long it's been since then. But I mean, in my career, I've seen people where, I couldn't do that. And it takes some time to do, but they can relearn it. It's a skill. It's a skill we've been able to do our entire life. And our body has that ability to do it. We just have to train it again.
Fear of falling is sometimes as dangerous as the fall itself. And ironically, being afraid to fall increases our risk of falling because it often changes the way that people move and live. So how do you approach building confidence in your patients? And I think you referred to some of those concepts already, but are there any other things that you can think of that you use to build confidence in your patients?
So we do want to put them in situations to stretch their boundaries a little bit. We don't just, put them in a place where they could stand or sit all day long, because that doesn't build confidence. And that fear of falling is, for a lot of people, it's crushing, it's crippling. To them, it's the worst case scenario. So for them, as soon as they get into anything that resembles an unstable thing, their body almost like freezes, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And that's really hard to right your balance when you're frozen. And, I kind of gave like the big log type of analogy that it's like, yeah, those things, the big trees fall hard. So keeping yourself in a state where you're not just in this frozen state like a statue falling over can really help your outcomes from that. Putting people into situations where they have to use their balance and have some success with it. And it's like, oh, wow, I could do that now. I didn't think I could do that. Or I couldn't do that last week. Or I didn't do it as well last week. I feel like this is getting better. It might not be that clear to people sometimes. It's like, oh, my balance still isn't good. It's like, well, but is it better than it was 2 weeks ago? Realize like, yeah, it isn't this, as soon as I'm in an unstable situation, I know I'm going to fall. So I avoid that for the life of me.
If one of our listeners only walks away with a single practical thing that they can start doing this week to build resilience against falls, what would you recommend?
Keep moving, keep safely pushing your physical boundaries, your physical limits a little bit. This doesn't mean that you have to go, sign up for martial arts or some, extreme sport or something like that to practice doing backflips. It just means whatever the thing is that is a little bit challenging for you, that you still challenge yourself. That could be, again, just walking in the community. There's a lot of people where it's like, oh, it's a little bit hard to do, so I just stopped doing it because it's not very comfortable, or it's not as enjoyable because it's harder to do. That just limits you from doing that. And then all of a sudden, you don't have as much endurance, or your balance isn't challenged as much. And then all of a sudden, walking around your backyard or throughout your house consistently is more challenging. So there's just it's very easy for the world to kind of close in on us a little bit when we don't consistently push or maintain our physical limits.
As a doctor of physical therapy and as a certified strength and conditioning specialist, I know that you've worked with a lot of different types of people, athletes and patients and just everyday people. What is your message of encouragement for anyone who's nervous about falling as they age?
It's understandable to be nervous about that. You don't have to ask too many people who have known someone that has fallen as they age and they do have an injury with it. But the majority of times it's not that. Like it is something that happens, but it's not always the worst case scenario. And in most cases, it isn't the worst case scenario. They are preventable. It is a skill that they can learn, and to be proactive about it. The quote of, Father Time is undefeated. Yeah, that might be true. However, that just because you're aging, just because you are getting another year older, you still can maintain a lot of skills. And that can be for anyone as they age, it's just, it's a little harder to do this. It's a little harder to do that. But working at it makes it easier to maintain that.
Dr. Meyer, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I know that owning your own practice, you must stay very busy, and I very much appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and our listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was glad to do so, Roy.
I hope you caught the central thread in today's conversation with Dr. Eric Meyer. Falling doesn't have to equal failing. As he pointed out, it's not just about avoiding the fall, it's about learning not to freeze, knowing how to land, and having the confidence to get back up. And confidence isn't something we're just born with or that we lose with age. It's a skill. It can be practiced and built and strengthened, just like balance or strength or endurance. Every time we push our limits safely, every time we get back on the floor and try again, we're training confidence as much as we're training muscles. Falling well is only half the equation. The other half is being able to get back up safely and confidently. That's where resilience and independence really shine. Fear of falling shrinks your world. Confidence, built through movement and practice and recovery skills, expands it. So here's the takeaway. Don't just avoid challenges, practice resilience. Learn how to protect yourself when you fall and make getting back up part of the drill. The goal isn't to never fall. It's to be strong enough to fall and strong enough to rise again so you can keep living fully. If you need advice or have questions about how to develop these skills, I'll include contact information for Dr. Eric Meyer in the show notes. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you and would love to help you out. And I would love for you to share this episode with someone who'd be encouraged by it. Whether that's an older adult in your life, a caregiver, or just someone who you think could use this knowledge. And stay tuned for the final part of this series coming up next week, where we'll explore the hidden aftershocks of a fall, how it can break more than just bones. If you've got a story about falling or about anything that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Please reach out. Look for me on social media, text me, email me. I'll include my contact information in the show notes. Or if you'd like to come on and share your story on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you as well. Please reach out. And now, until next time, listener, fight wisely, age bravely,